her crying, and her breaking up with guys that she doesn't like. Those are the things that people are mad at her for. And when you really think about that, like, what does that say about what we expect of women?
I think that's all she's guilty of, is trying to figure out this like very impossible situation where she will fail no matter what she does. Hi, we're Kelly and Julie, and we're here to find love. Today we're getting into a Bachelorette recap of Gabby and Rachel season 19, Fantasy Suites Part 1. This week's episode was the first season where it just felt like everyone, the internet, the contestants, was turning against the leads. It is not a good thing to be the Bachelorette anymore. It's just not. I felt bad for these girls.
Oh my God.
So if you're new here, welcome. We're two dating coaches who analyze the relationship psychology and dating themes in reality TV shows, especially The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. So if you're into this kind of stuff, hit that subscribe button and let's get started.
So let's start by talking about everything that happened with Rachel first, because I think those were, it was an explosion for everyone. Everything. It was a whole dumpster fire. But let's start with Rachel, and then we'll get into Gabby. Starting on the Zach thing, we had so many thoughts about what we learned about Zach last week. But this week, I feel like we kind of started to get the truth coming out. So the episode opens up with Rachel at the rose ceremony. Zach pulls her aside to kind of confront her about the fact that he thought she was being a different person at their fantasy suites, and he basically sends himself home. He's like, I can't keep dating you. I need to leave. Goodbye. And he leaves, and they break up, and that's kind of that. In the simultaneous live recording, Rachel and Zach seem to kind of like, they both just kind of like apologize to each other and make nice. The audience seems happy about it. The internet is up Rachel's ass. The internet really did not like the way Rachel handled this situation. Most people, from what I saw on Twitter, most people seem to be on Team Zach. I have a very different thought. My feelings are very different. The truth seems to come out in that interview between Rachel and Zach in the live setting. It seems like what happened was Rachel had made it clear at the beginning of their fantasy suite that she was having doubts about their relationship. It sounds like one of the things that she brought up was this question of, are you ready? Are you really ready to get married right now at this time in your life, at this age? And it sounds like Zach kind of held on to that age thing and like ran with it, even though she said like that was kind of a miscommunication. She wasn't particularly harping on his age according to her. Like it didn't seem like she cared about his age at all. And in fact, when she said that in the live scene, in the live interview, it made me remember that she said the same thing in her fantasy suite with Aven. She like sat him down at the dinner portion and she's like, are you ready to get engaged? Are you really ready? And she like really emphasized it. And Aven was like, yeah, definitely. And like he kind of like hesitated with how seriously she had asked that question. And it sounds to me that maybe she did the exact same thing with Zach, but Zach took it personally and made, like, Zach kind of thought it was like a personal attack on him, or like a person, like, I think that she was just asking that same question to everyone, but because she had doubts about Zach, Zach kind of took that and like ran with it. But it doesn't sound like she was actually really harping on the age thing, according to what they said anyway at that interview. It to me, what it sounds like is she made it clear that she had doubts at the beginning of their fantasy suite. They had a really awkward rest of the night because after you're like, I have doubts about you, it's really hard to enjoy a sleepover overnight together. Like it makes sense that it would be really awkward for the rest of the night. And then Zach kind of walked away and lashed out at her on camera, even though it wasn't like she was being ingenuine. It sounded like she honestly was coming around to the fact that maybe she doesn't want to pursue things with him. It sounds like she was actually being very straightforward with him, in fact, but he kind of spun it in this weird way that she was like, because she changed her mind about him, she was being inauthentic and was a different person. And it doesn't actually seem like she was. It seems like she was being straight up. And to me, it just feels like he lashed out at her for having doubts. I think he should have apologized a lot more than he did on that stage, because it sounds like he wasn't trying to do this, but what he did was basically turn the whole internet against her. The whole internet is mad at her now. The whole internet thinks she's fake. The whole internet thinks, she like doesn't deserve love and whatever they're saying. I'm kind of upset with him. I feel like he got off pretty easy. Like Rachel was being super gracious, in my opinion.
I have a slightly different take to that. I do agree that, first off, I don't think the internet should be turning on Rachel at all. I think people in general are very uncomfortable with a woman displaying their emotions. So to see Rachel being someone that wears her heart on her sleeve, a lot of people don't know how to handle that, and a lot of that hate is being redirected to her in a very negative way. In regards to the breakup, it did seem to me that Rachel knew that it maybe wasn't going to be him. Maybe she got into the fantasy suites like, I'm really excited to be with him, realized, okay, I don't want to sleep with him because he really likes me. So how do I kind of push him away a little bit, or not, like not be super lovey-dovey knowing that I'm going to send him home the next day?
It's possible that she was going to think it over and then, make the decision. I agree. I think that by the time of the rose ceremony, I think she didn't cry because she was planning to break up with him. I saw that too. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, she didn't even seem like emotional about him leaving. But to me, that kind of made sense, because it seems like if she wasn't going to give him the rose and she intended to break up with him, she wouldn't cry. She told him as much as she could, which was that she was having doubts. And if she wasn't fully decided yet, like, it would be cutting it off too soon to just be like, I have doubts and therefore you need to leave. Like, it makes sense that she would want to take the full time to meet, that she would want to take the full time to the rose ceremony to know for sure, but she at least gave him the heads up that, like, hey, don't go into the rose ceremony being all like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love, we're so in love. Like, she gave him the heads up. So to me, I think all of her behavior felt fair.
She can't win. Even if she did do it that way, the internet would hate her. Even if she did it her way, the internet would hate her. Right now, she is very much like an inflammatory character. They just don't like her decisions. They don't like her choices. They don't like her emotions. So Rachel can't really win right now. In that situation, I don't think Zach came away looking great.
It's like we were two strangers. I don't know what it could be, but Rachel's concern came out of nowhere. And I think it's to be honest. And she was putting on a front. That scares me. That scares me a lot.
He came away looking like a pretty big jerk. The way that he immediately, he degraded her. He degraded her character. He really called into question her ethics. And that's living record. That is on TV. That is on the internet forever. Just like his indictment of her.
On stage, like, she seemed really restrained. I actually felt like she was conscious of the fact that the internet hates her. Anything that she says, anything that she does is going to be used against her. So she was really not saying very much when she was up on that stage. I felt bad for her. I think she realized that, like, her being genuine, her being real, her being herself, her showing her emotions, the internet doesn't want it. People don't want to see it. And so she has kind of shut down, at least from what we saw in this live stage version. To your point, like, the sad thing about it is it doesn't seem like she had any real ill will towards Zach at all. Personally, I don't actually think that she made any mistakes in the situation. I know that you kind of disagree, and clearly a lot of people on the internet disagree. I think that she was as clear as she could be in this situation, and I don't actually think that she made any real missteps with Zach, but I do think that of the two of them, I think he was the one who really handled the breakup the poorest, because he was the one who kind of lashed out against her, who kind of turned the rejection into an indictment of her, right? He turned the fact that she was kind of pulling away, he turned that into a thing that is wrong with her, as opposed to something that she should be allowed to do, which is, people are always allowed, I mean, you and I say this all the time, people are always allowed to leave relationships. People should not be shamed for wanting to leave, for having doubts, right? People shouldn't be shamed for that. And I feel like Rachel has been all season getting shamed for not wanting to date guys that the internet finds really likable. And, like, the internet loved all of these various guys, Zach, Jordan, whoever. I think that Rachel not wanting to date those guys is part of the thing that, as you said, is causing this very misogynist reaction, this, like, reaction of, like, these hot, desirable men, you don't want to date them, there must be something wrong with you. You're the problem, right? And the finger is kind of getting pointed at her, when in reality, I don't think she's actually done much wrong this season other than, I don't know, falling too in love with Tino. Like, that's like my main thing with Rachel. But like the things that people are mad at her for is like her crying and her breaking up with guys that she doesn't like. Those are the things that people are mad at her for. And when you really think about that, like, what does that say about what we expect of women? Like, we expect them to just smile and date whoever wants to date them.
And to your point, it's not like I disagree with what Rachel did. It's just simply me illuminating there's another way that she could have done things. But there's so many ways that we could all do things. Like, we are not perfect in every situation that we're in. What's important is our ability to have a conflict and then repair it properly. Like, have the right skills and being able to say, like, hey, this is what I did wrong. This is me being accountable. This is what I own up to. And that's what they both did on that stage. But the internet is not focused on that. They're focused on what someone did in a very real moment when their emotions are raw and they were really vulnerable. There isn't really a right or a wrong way to handle these situations. What matters the most is how people walk away from these situations. And they both seem to have walked away with it with a lot of love and compassion for each other. But no one's focused on that. They're all focused on, like, what happened, what did this, what did that. And it's like, Rachel is a person trying to figure it out. You don't get a manual when you're the Bachelorette. You just know how you're treated in the past, and you know how other people have done it, but you don't know how people are going to react to you. So I think that's all she's guilty of, is trying to figure out this like very impossible situation where she will fail no matter what she does.
I know.
Like, she's going to lose.
The really sad thing is I think that she was mad at Zach at the end there. Like, the way that he broke up with her at the end, where he was like, you clearly are like you're being cold, you're different. I felt like we were strangers. And so I loved you, but now I'm breaking up with you. Now I have to leave. Like, I think that she was actually really hurt and upset by that because, and I think rightfully so, because he kind of turned this moment that could have been a really sweet moment for them to just like have this loving, tender ending to what was a good relationship. He kind of like turned this into a you did me wrong kind of moment. And I think she was upset about it, but she kind of couldn't express it because, to your point, everyone kind of, no matter what she does, like everyone is gonna just like blow up at her. So she kind of like after the final rose or whatever, this live stage interview, like she kind of couldn't even express that frustration. Yeah. And, you know, at this point in this climate and environment where kind of anything that she says is going to be taken like the wrong way, anything that she does, people are going to attack her for it. I do actually think it made sense for her in this situation to just kind of like smile and nod along. But to be frank, I would be really mad if I were her too. I would be really hurt by what Zach did, and you know, that's going to follow her forever. Like, she was being so gracious to just kind of like, she apologized to him several times. He apologized to her. It was a really sweet scene, but like, Rachel's not going to walk away from that scene okay. Zach's going to walk away okay. Everyone loves Zach, but Rachel's not going to walk away from this being okay because people don't want to give her the grace. So yeah, to me, it was sad primarily because of the way people have responded to the situation. Because you're right, Rachel and Zach seem to have walked away able to like, they kind of walked away like, all right, we're going to make our peace and like, we're going to wish the best for each other and go forth. But the internet is going to continue to pile on her. And it's kind of sad. To me, it just keeps coming back to the misogyny. To me, I think Rachel is getting like a really weird hit of the misogyny of our culture and what we expect of women.
I agree. And she's being treated much differently than Gabby.
Yeah, she really is. Next week, we can talk more about this and like talk about like how people have perceived Rachel and Gabby very differently. For now, let's get into talking about Rachel and Aven because there's so much to say about that too. The basic thing that happened with Rachel and Aven was Aven went to meet Rachel's family and she was gushing about him the whole time, and Aven was basically saying to her friends like, actually, I really want to keep dating her. Like, I see her in my life, but I don't think that I'm ready to get engaged to her. And when her friends told this to her, she was shocked. And I think it would be shocking. I will say, one thing that I think is good about these two and the way they walked away from the situation is it sounds like even though Aven didn't agree with her decision to end things, at least they both understood each other's points of view. Like, he understood that she wanted to get engaged, and she understood that he, you know, just didn't want to do that and just wasn't ready to take that step in their relationship. And I think that they did, for all the miscommunication that they had earlier, like during the family meetup portion, for all that miscommunication, and what a devastating breakup conversation they had.
Intended for this to happen at all.
I'm so sorry. I just feel like my heart is like breaking right now. Like, I'm sorry.
I just want you to be happy. I want you to be happy in all of this.
Which, by the way, was so emotional. Like, I was kind of surprised, like, how much they cried during that conversation. Like, we've been joking about Rachel and Aven that, like, they seem like a nice, sweet couple, but, like, nothing really special. But they cried a lot about that. I was, like, surprised how much emotion was there. I feel like we kind of didn't get to see enough of their relationship for me to really get that breakup. But
that's how I knew the editing had screwed us over of that, because those are like some real tears.
I was like kind of confused about it. But what I will say about this, it felt very similar to me to like the Rachel Lindsay Peter Krause thing from Rachel Lindsay's season. Like, felt very similar to me in that way of like, you know, like they really like had strong feelings for each other. They just were in different places and had different, you know, expectations for when an engagement is appropriate.
I have the exact same thoughts that I kind of had about the Zach thing. After a breakup, you're not going to agree on why you broke up. You are just not. Even if you think there's a really objective, impartial side, you have your feelings invested in it, and you have all of these projections that are feeding into your perspective. That, I mean, I think that we witnessed that after Aven met her friends and her family, when she was like, this is what I see, this is what I see, and she was really digging her heels into her perspective, and so was Aven. They're just not going to agree, and it was pretty indicative of, okay, maybe they're not going to be a good match, because they're also not really willing to listen to each other about what Rachel really needed in that moment, what Aven really needed in that moment.
You and I always say, like, no one should ever get engaged in 2 months. And I still basically think that's true. And I also think it is okay for someone to see marriage differently. For some people, marriage isn't about, you know, finding the perfect person that you know so well. For a lot of people, they just want someone who will commit to them and that they can work in the marriage on figuring out all the other stuff, and they'll work through the ups and downs, but they just want to like lock in with someone and then go through the trials and tribulations. So I think it's just like a different way of viewing marriage, and I think it's okay to view marriage in that way. Would I recommend it? No. But it's okay to view marriage in that way. You know, I saw a lot of people on the internet accusing Rachel specifically of ring chasing, which is ironic because Gabby is just as hooked on the idea of getting engaged as Rachel has been throughout the season, but everyone's mad at Rachel for doing it. But nonetheless, I saw a lot of people saying like she cares more about the ring than she does about any of these men. And I think that's a pretty unfair portrayal, frankly. Like, I think it's not fair to judge or shame someone for knowing what kind of relationship they want to be in. They want to be in a committed lifelong partnership. That's what they signed on to do in this process. And so to me, I think it's okay for Rachel and Aven to just realize that they have different views of what marriage means and when you enter into a marriage. And I think it's okay that they broke up over this. I don't think it's okay for people to be saying that, you know, one person's way is better than the other person's way. It's just kind of about finding two people who are aligned, and, you know, that's what you need. You just need someone who sees it the same way you see it. And clearly these two just didn't see it the same way.
They're not really having a lot of conversations around what being on the show really means to them, what an engagement really means to them. And then it gets to the end and they're kind of going through these motions of like fantasy suites, hometown, meeting parents, and you can tell the guys are really starting to get in their head. Before they're like, yeah, I totally am falling in love with this girl. I can totally see myself with this person. And then as they inch closer and closer to the engagement and they pick the nail lane ring, they're all just like spazzing out. Like, oh my God, I think I need to date more. But Gabby and Rachel have not changed their mind once. They have committed because they came on the show committing to an idea, and they haven't really wavered from that. Whereas I feel like the guys are going through this emotional journey of which bachelorette do I pick? Okay, now how much do I commit to her? How many dates do I get with her? They're on a different journey, and I feel like they're, if they're like rocket ships, they're just on a super slow trajectory versus like Gabby and Rachel are like already on the moon. Like the guys are still like course correcting their way there, and they're just not able to. They're kind of getting lost in the sauce. They're like just moving around.
I know.
Like, do I want to go there? Do I want to go back to Earth? Like, is this a leap of faith I want to take? And all of these guys are kind of falling whim to it. It's surprising to me because it's like the girls have been so consistent the entire season. And these guys have had such a late start and all of these new decision-making nuances that they didn't have before.
Totally. You know, most people go on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette because it's cool to be on TV. It's cool to be part of the social experiment. This is a great way to grow my social media business. That's the real reason most people will go on this show as a contestant. I think by the time that you choose to be a lead, especially for like Rachel and Gabby, you know, they were contestants on the show and it worked for them. They fell in love with Clayton, right? So they already had an experience where they realized that the process could work for them. Obviously, it didn't because Clayton ended up being a big dingbat, but like, you know.
Literally, the biggest.
That's the biggest understatement of the century, but, you know, like, they already have buy-in into the process, unlike all of these new contestants.
Great point. Yeah.
Right? And so they already know that this can work, and they are joining as leads because they want it to work. Versus contestants are joining not necessarily because they want to get engaged. They're joining mostly because it's interesting. I would join if I wasn't in a relationship. Oh yeah, sure, I'd go on this fucking show. I don't know if I would get engaged in 2 months, but like, yeah, I would
that
go
would
figure
crack
out what's going
me
on.
up if you were like the top 3. I would
always
die of laughter if I was like one of your friends, like Kelly. Don't be for real.
You would be like.
Like, Kelly,
I was
get out of
literally
here.
thinking that when we were seeing Rachel's like 2 friends, I was like, Julie, if she would be on that couch being like, Kelly, don't fucking do this, you stupid asshole. Like,
I'd be like, Kelly, we're playing around, right? You came on the show for a good time. That's what the still is, right? Like, I feel like a lot of the guys were on that same path, and now they're just like, oh my God, like I'm at the end. Exactly, but it's like the girls are so committed at that point, and it just really does come to a simple conversation that maybe they're not having doing fantasy suites because they do want to have that. They have such little time together that they do want to use it for all of the fun things, all of the other political conversations, the things that are important, but they're not being like, okay, what does this show mean to you? Why did you come on it? I know why I came on it, but why did you? And now it's kind of like falling apart the more and more the show goes on, which we saw with Aven, which was very shocking.
Well, the funny thing with the Aven-Rachel situation to me is that it sounds like they did have that conversation, and Aven just kind of just blurted out whatever she wanted to hear. Like, it sounds like in the fantasy suites,
which does happen.
Right. She seemed very convinced that, you know, she seemed very convinced that Aven was 100% in, ready to get engaged based on that, you know, what we saw. And so it seems like they did actually talk about it. But, I mean, Aven even said this himself when they were breaking up. He was like, I think I just got caught up in everything that was happening. And she caught that line. She was like, caught up? You were caught up in me? She got upset about it, which, to be fair, I would be really upset about it too. I mean, imagine if like you have been dating a guy for months and you realize that you're in love with him and he tells you that he loves you, and then like 2 weeks later he's like, actually I just said that because I was getting caught up in things. That would be devastating to hear. So like, to be fair to Rachel, I would be really, really devastated to hear that all of the sweet things, all of the meaningful relationship solidifying things that my partner has been saying to me, he actually just said it because he was getting caught up in the feelings, right? Like that to me, like, she seemed really devastated and really like, I think that for her it was a lot more about that breach of trust and the betrayal. I mean, I think part of it was, of course, that they were in different places. At the end of the day, the timing wasn't right. But I think the reason that it hurt her as much as it did, because she clearly, like, kept harping on the fact that, like, I'm so confused. Like, I didn't expect this from you. I think that it really felt like it, honestly, a repeat of what happened with Clayton, where Clayton said that he was in love with her, and then a week later he was like, actually, I didn't mean that. I only love one person, right? He said, I love you, and then he kind of took it back in the end. To me, this actually felt kind of similar, right? Aven said he wanted to get engaged to her, and then he was like, actually, never mind. And that is really devastating to have people say things like that to you, like confess their feelings, give some kind of commitment to the relationship, only to walk it back like a week or two later. Like, that is really devastating. It does make it really hard to trust people, right? Because if I'm Rachel, I'm like, in my next relationship, and she said this when he came for his meeting with her family, she was like, it's really hard for me to trust anything that he says. Like, how can I be confident in anything anyone says when, like, you know, they could the next day just say that they changed their mind or that they were getting caught up in it. Like, and I think that makes sense. I think it makes sense for her to be feeling destabilized, because it's kind of like nothing that anyone says is holding any weight right now. Nothing that anyone says is like feeling like it's actually true, which to me is another good reason why you should not get engaged on this show. That's besides the point. But like, you know, I really understand.
But that is the point, though. Like, really what you just said is the point, that the girls are a little bit more focused on getting an engagement or the proposal versus really looking at the group of guys and really thinking if they're the right kind of guys. Maybe they're ruling out good guys because they're so focused on the one person that is also on the same page with them with the engagement, without making sure that there's a value alignment and that they have all of these core things in common first. So I can see them maybe not making the best decisions because they do have that filter on them. I don't think it's wrong what they're doing. It's just a perspective that they have on right now that's screening out these other guys. And that's why Erich and Tino are being elevated. But now we're seeing Tino and Erich also kind of like not have the thing that's making them stick out from the rest of the crowd. So now they're just giant like red flags to me. They don't even have like that little bit of a veneer that makes them worthwhile to be like the final rose.
I do think that in theory, I don't think it's wrong to look first for alignment on whether or not someone wants to get engaged, and then look at the values alignment. Is the connection there? Do you have things in common? I actually think it's okay to look at in that order. I know that's a kind of controversial take coming from someone who's always criticizing this show, but I do actually think that it is okay to have a specific type of relationship you want to get into. Because I think of it like, oh, I really want to be in a long-term relationship. This guy tells me that he's not sure. Maybe he wants to be in a long-term relationship. Maybe he wants to be casually dating. I'm not going to start dating this guy who doesn't even know that he wants a long-term relationship. I know for a fact that I want a long-term relationship. So I'm not going to bother with a guy who isn't even really sure what he wants. So I think it is okay to rule people out that are not on the same page with you in terms of what, you know, where the relationship is going. And so, you know, do I think that you should ring chase? Of course not. But I do think that it's okay for Rachel to say, like, what I want is to get married, you know, at the end of 8 weeks. And I only want guys to be here who want to get married to me in 8 weeks. I think it's okay for her and Gabby to say this. And I do think it's unreasonable for any guy to stay in this process if that is not what they want. I think it is unreasonable. Like, I think that it is not fair to either of them, and I think it is okay for them to just decide that this is how they want to approach a relationship. And all they need to do is find another person who wants to approach the relationship in the same way, who they, of course, have values and things in common with, and, you know, they get along and have the feelings for. Of course, you need all of that too, but I think it's okay to have your baseline criteria be, hey, we want the same thing. Before I'm even going to get to know you and decide if I like you, I need to know that you want the same thing as me.
I really do believe that The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, if they continue with like an engagement at the end, they're always going to have these super dramatic finales with people not being on the same page, because now people are entering the show with such different motives, such different agendas, and production is changing the format so quickly that you're not even able to focus on that one question anymore. Like, a lot of these guys, it wasn't until mid-season that they even knew the Bachelorette they're going to be with. That's wild to me. So now these guys have to be like, I'm going to take a leap of faith and get engaged to someone. Yeah. So I can see a little bit about why they're kind of falling off a little bit, which we can talk about with, should we talk about Tino?
Yeah, the long and short of it with Tino is just they had their meeting. He met the family. They loved him. And she seems really happy with him. I think that the only reason that she was holding back from just being all in on Tino is she just wanted to see how things went with Aven. But once they broke up, it seems like she's going to go all in on Tino. But now we have this preview for next week, our true finale, our season finale, which suggests that Tino is going to do something that's going to not be okay for Rachel. So it seems like maybe they're going to break up. Not clear just yet, but there seems to be some issues, some more turbulence ahead for these two.
I do have a prediction that it's going to be after their engagement. So I do think that they're going to choose each other at the end, but then something will happen, or Rachel will be like, you're not the person I thought it was. Very much Hannah Brown, Jed situation, which would be painful, but it would explain why her face was so crestfallen the entire episode. Like, first knowing the internet hates her, second knowing that the guy that she picks, the one that the internet hates her with, happens to be the one that she breaks up with as well. But we will see. We want to know what you guys think about Rachel. Do you agree with her villain arc? Because right now she is just, it's hard for her. It is hard for her right now.
She's getting not one single ounce of grace from the internet, from the public.
Except us.
Except for us. We're like the only...
You're her biggest number one. Yo, you're like in her corner.
Me? I'm so, like, I am Team Rachel all the way. I will go down with this ship. I think that... You're right. I don't know what happened. Listen, I just want to, like, state for the record, I have not always been Team Rachel. I really didn't like her in Clayton season. Do you remember?
I do.
Like,
you made fun of her voice. I sat there,
like, making fun of her voice. I was like, she's so, like, I made fun of her so much. I had such a problem with her all the way to the end of her season, and then finally I kind of, like, came around. I, like, kind of came around, like, during the finale of Clayton season, and then once the season began, that's when it all turned around for me. So I have not always been a Rachel fan, but I really do think that she has proved herself this season of being a really real, really authentic person who treats people compassionately. She's honest with people. She's straightforward with people. Like, I think she's good peeps. I'm mad at y'all for being mad at her.
You heard it here first. And on top of that, let's move on to Gabby. Yeah.
So with Gabby, her one guy, Erich, goes to meet her family. It seems to go really well. And then what happens is afterwards, on their final date, the final date that happens, I think the night before the proposal, they have a conversation where Erich reveals that he just wants to date her outside before an engagement happens.
I want to date you. In the real world, I want to date you. And it's getting engaged before that happens is not how things usually go.
Yeah.
And she starts crying and having a meltdown in the hallway, and it all goes to shit from there.
To me, a lot of her tears weren't necessarily about Erich's engagement. It was about what Erich not wanting to get engaged to her made her think about her as a person, which she illuminated to her visit with her family member, where she said, What if he thinks I'm not lovable because my mom didn't love me? So much of Erich's validation is wrapped around Gabby's idea of like conditional and unconditional love, which is dangerous. It is really, really dangerous to ever give someone that much power into who you are as a person. So I just don't, I mean, Erich is just like this man with a mullet. Are you kidding me? He's not worth half of those tears. It's only because she's like thinking about all of her mom's stuff too, and Erich is just being steeped with a lot of this stuff, and it's not really his to carry. But it also isn't. It explains why Gabby's reaction was as big as that in terms of like, I want to go home, I want to be off the show, because the one thing that she was really looking for that would mean I am lovable, someone loves me, they love me enough to marry me, they love me enough to get engaged to me. If that doesn't happen, she's now making it seem like, okay, well then all of this was for nothing.
For me, the main reason why I hesitate about Gabby and Erich's relationship is exactly what you're saying, which is that it feels like she is just putting so much weight on this relationship. Even her, I think this was like her aunt or her stepmom, I don't know who this was, but she was like, the one thing Gabby needs from a relationship is to feel like she's worthy. And I was like, no one should look to a relationship to prove that they're worthy. No one should ever do that. That always has to come from yourself. That always has to come from within. That is the road to codependency. That is the road to an unhealthy relationship. But not only that, you are placing something that needs to come from within on someone else. Because what happens if Erich breaks up with her? She's going to crack. She's going to fall because she's placing something that has to come from within on someone else.
She seems very afraid to even let Erich into that thought pattern because she believes that if she tells him, he will see her differently. But right now, he's not even interacting with Gabby, this wonderful person that she is. Half of it is Gabby's insecurities and her hiding herself because she is so afraid of what his judgment means of her. But his judgment literally means nothing. That is the problem when you place something internal onto something so external. It can lead you down a road of getting into really abusive relationships because you're not seeing things clearly. And I'm not saying Erich is in any way abusive, but it's just the fact of her contorting herself and fitting herself into an image that she thinks will make her the most lovable. But when you package yourself like that, you're really taking out the parts of you and abandoning the parts of you that are really necessary, that really need to be loved, but you're just like cleaving it off. So that to me was kind of why I started to see towards the end, like, I don't think there's really any problems with Erich. He just seems like a perfectly normal dude. I don't, like, nothing super extraordinary, nothing super bad either, but it's just the fact that Gabby wants a lot out of him that she hasn't necessarily said before. And now him having this turnaround based on a lot of the points that we mentioned before about these guys and them kind of like getting themselves out of the situation, she's making it super overblown. So we'll see how it goes.
I feel like they were having this conversation where she said this thing about, like, I don't want to put pressure on me or you. Like, I just want clarity. I just want to know where you're at. So it did kind of sound like she was basically saying, like, if you just want to date me, it's okay.
But the last thing I want to do is put pressure on you. But I'm not the one proposing. And that's why, like, I don't know. We kind of, like, see, maybe. But if we have to, like, listen to ourselves.
She kind of made it seem like it would be okay for him to say that. And so he was like, okay, yeah, I think I would prefer to just date you. And then she was like, what?
I hate that cool girl thing. Don't be a cool girl. Be a Rachel.
Be a Rachel, exactly how I feel. Like, Gabby was being, like, a little coy about it. Like, she didn't want to say directly what she wanted. Versus Rachel is always very clear about what she wants. Even though Gabby wants the same things as Rachel, she just isn't saying it. Based on the live interviews with Gabby when she was sitting there on that stage, to me versus Rachel seemed very stone-faced and like she was, I think that things don't go well for her. Gabby was like laughing and smiling throughout her, like the scenes between her and Erich. She was smiling, like the camera was on her face, and she seemed to be more jovial about how things have turned out. So to me, it kind of feels like she's gonna end up with Erich, maybe like not engaged, just like dating Erich, and not with, you know, like it seems like she's gonna come around to not get engaged to him.
I have a different take.
What do you think? Tell me.
I think that Rachel is just more honest about her emotions and Gabby is not. Like, I think that Rachel is someone that wears her heart on her sleeve, like you said before. She is someone that, like, says when she's feeling something. I think Gabby plays it a little bit more cool. Like, she just doesn't really say anything, so she hides it. Like, I think that maybe she does end up with Erich. I just don't think they're happy, or they're going to be happy. Gabby deserves to be with, like, a guy that can really hold her down and lift her up. You know what I mean? Just make her feel really secure and amplify her. Erich, to me, just seems like the first guy she's ever dated that could give her one of those things, but not the full thing. So I think Gabby being on stage, I mean, she was an NFL cheerleader where you just have to always put a smile on your face when you're performing.
Good point.
Yeah,
really
I just think Rachel
point.
is just super honest about it. And Gabby is just a little bit like on the, you know, she's like sitting there with her dress, just like laughing and making jokes, but I couldn't like see her full personality at all. But I don't think they're happy of how the season went. It's not good to be a lead anymore. It's better to go on bib. At this point, it's way better to go on bib. I don't see any benefits of being the lead. You just get abused and humiliated and exploited on television now.
I agree with that. I mean, I really do. I'm really pissed by the way production and the show and the edit has kind of messed with both of them. I'm mad at the way they messed with Rachel. Even in this little live thing, it felt like they were kind of just teasing this idea about like, oh, but Rachel's kind of a villain, don't you all think? Like, it felt like that was, like, being teased. Like, Jesse kept asking when Zach and
hate Jesse.
And Rachel...
Jesse is so annoying.
It's so annoying. When Zach and Rachel were sitting there, he kept basically... all questions went to Zach. I think he asked Rachel maybe one question during that entire interview.
Yeah.
Everything went to Zach. It was like... Oh, Zach, weren't you so hurt? Oh, Zach, weren't you so mad? Zach, what really happened? I was like, can we please hear Rachel's side of this story? I don't understand why they're so just like, I think they just really wanted to like craft this controversial narrative around Rachel. And I think it is intentional. I think it's not fair. I think the way the public is reacting to Rachel was intentional on the part of production. I think that production wanted her to have this kind of villainous kind of twist at the end of her story, even though I don't actually think she deserved it in any way, but everyone's just kind of eating it up. And yeah, I'm mad at the way the show is treating leads lately. I'm really, really upset with it.
This is nighttime for us, okay? We filmed as soon as the episode was over, and I didn't get anything from the trailer. Last week was so juicy, and this was just so watered down because they're waiting for next week. It just, to me, is like, what is the show doing? Where is it going? I'm just sick of it. Like, I know Bib will at least give us some of the content that we're looking for because it's marketed the right way. Like, what is this show? I have no idea.
Okay, so let us know down below, how do you all think this is going to end for Gabby and Rachel? Do you think Rachel and Tina will be together? Do you think Gabby and Erich will be together? Are you happy about either of these relationships? Like, let us know down below. Let's discuss it because me and Julie are concerned. We have so many concerns.
Deeply concerned.
So this story is all going to come to an end next week. Make sure you are subscribed to our channel so you can hear our final analysis of the whole season, what we think of the season finale, as well as our overall like retrospective of how we think this season went and how we think that both of these two women fared trying to do the Bachelorette together. We have so many thoughts about all of this, so make sure you are subscribed, you got those notifications dinged or whatever, and we will see you all next week. Bye!